have your way in this place today. In Jesus' name, everyone said, amen. You may be seated if you're at home. Thank you for joining us. You can sit on your couch. You may already be there, wherever you're watching from today. Well, who here has ever had a deadline for something? Have you ever been on a deadline before? Who here has been on a deadline from me? No. That I had a deadline for you. Maybe you've been at school. You've been at school. If you're in school, we got kids with us today. I know university, I had a lot of projects or assignments or essays that had a deadline. But you might have a deadline. I know you guys set goals. At Westdale Christian Academy, they goal set, and you have to meet your goals, and you kind of have a deadline that you got to get it done by that day, or homework you want to get it done. We've all had deadlines. You've all had a deadline, whether it's at school, a work project. Maybe it's a parking ticket. You know, there's deadlines on parking tickets. I haven't got one lately, but you have a few weeks to pay it, and it's, what is a going parking ticket these days? Does anybody know? $20? $20. Okay, and then if you don't pay within a couple weeks, it goes up to 50? All right. So that's kind of a deadline, right? And so you have that. How about bills? Bills sort of have deadlines. I mean, you kind of have some wiggle room, but if you go long enough, you're going to get eviction notices, final notice. We're going to shut down your electricity. You're going to get kicked out of your house. There's deadlines on that before they shut it off and stuff. So we deal with deadlines in life all the time. My Costco card used to have a deadline. Every end of May, I had to go in and renew my Costco card. Anybody have a Costco card? And the way I would figure out I needed to renew it as I go to the pump to put gas in, because I always put gas in before I go grocery shopping, and it would tell me, this card is overdue and you can use it one more time here before you're in trouble. And usually I would walk in and go renew it right then, but sometimes it'd have a really long lineup. I'll be like, I'll just do it next time. And the next time, I don't know if you've ever been caught by this, you go to pay it, sit in line for Costco gas forever, and you go put the card in, and it's like, nope, rejected. And they're like, oh yeah, there was a deadline for this, and I missed it. And then you usually have to humbly walk to the guy or girl that's helping there and say, hey, they have a card that can do it, and I forgot, and woe is me, right? But they got this new thing. I was in line at the end of August here, and a guy came up, and he's like, hey, we're doing auto renewal for Costco memberships. And I thought, what a great idea, because then I don't have to have that awkward gas pump thing every year. And so if you sign up now, and he said, today, if you sign up now, you get a $25 off coupon. And I'm like, I'm already liking the idea of auto renewal, and you gave me $25 to do it. So I had to walk over to a desk, and there was a lineup because it was the promotion. It was the last day. I don't know if it's ever the last day when people say that, but they say that to make you buy it, I'm sure. So anyways, or to get it. So I went over, entered all my information, and then I was like, where's my $25 coupon? She's like, oh, it's online. They'll send it to you online, like in email. And I'm like, okay. And she goes, in a few days, once you've done it, you'll have to register, and then it'll come to you. So a few days later, I get this email, and I realized that it's an actually online coupon. I can only use it if I'm purchasing something online. So ready, I'm a little bummed out. And then it was like, and you have till, I think I was doing this beginning of August, and you have till the end of August to do it. And not only that, in order to get the $25, sorry Costco, I'm shouting you down right now, you have to spend $100. So it wasn't what it was. And so I already knew right then, I'm like, this is a close deadline. I don't have a lot of time to research into what I want to buy online, and I'm not just going to try to spend $100 just to save $25. And so I kind of left it, and then the last Saturday before the end of August, I was going out, and I was like, oh yeah, I have that coupon. But I knew there was no way I was going to have time to really do it, or I would have just bought something I really didn't need just to save $25. It wasn't worth it. But I felt the pressure. I was like, oh, what do I do? And I knew that I was up against it, and I wasn't going to be able to meet it, and I was going to lose that $25. Not that I really did it for that. But I was up against it. I've said this before, I think my kids know this. That's a phrase I use mostly on Sunday mornings, right? Mostly to my wife, but I'm sure I've said it to my kids. That is what happens when, well, here, let me give you a story. And I'll give you the analogy of what happens Sunday morning in our house. We wake up, like angels. Nothing ever goes wrong. Smelling like roses. Everyone's happy to get up because it's church, right? That's how it happens for you guys, right? You just wake up and you just float out of bed because it's Sunday. Whoa, right? No traffic on the way to church. Everything's on, Sunday. Fun day, no, that's not what always happens. But we have a routine. We're usually here by 8:45 at the latest because of music and stuff with our whole family. So it's basically another school day. So we try to leave the house at 8:35. It doesn't take us 10 minutes to get here, but it leaves us some wiggle room in case things are behind. If I'm ministering, I'm up at about 5:30, getting ready, preparing, going through the message, doing the worship. My family gets up around 7:30, and so I'm down there for a bit, finishing up, going over music. And I can walk upstairs, and I can look at where everybody's at, where they are in the process, depending on the time I walk up, showering, getting ready. If it's been a late night the night before, I can tell that that's happening because people are slowly moving up. And I can look at my wife, and I quickly survey everything going on. I look at the time, and I say to her, "Babe, are we up against it?" And she goes, "Yes, we are." That means we need to get people cranked up because we are not going to make the 8:35 time leaving. This deadline is not going to happen the way we're moving. We're up against it. I'm starting to feel the pressure of that and being late and all that. And so I always say, we are up against it. What is it? Well, it is any difficult situation which seems like there's hardly any way out of it. When you're up against it, it's a difficult situation, and usually it's in terms of often time or money. In terms of time, you're up against it, and it's like, how do I get out of this? Oh my goodness, my kids are still in bed, and they're saying, I don't want to get up, throwing the covers out, I don't want to go, and things like that, or money. I don't have enough money, there's this bill coming up. It usually happens in terms of time or money where you're up against it. Has anyone here ever felt up against it? Either that. Some of you, I think I got more nods than hands. Not hopefully, but I'm assuming everyone in life has felt that at some point up against it. If not, tell me, write a book, and I'm going to read it to find out how you got through life never feeling like you were up against it. And so I'm sure we've all felt like we're up against it. Anyone who's really felt up against it, felt the pressure, knows it's not a fun place to function. It takes the fun out of function. And not only that, it's often in this place of being up against it where you feel the most pressure, the most helpless, and if we're being honest, sometimes the most alone. The more we fall behind, if I'm trying to get the kids ready and there's more tension and I'm trying to get them and it's going, the more I feel a little helpless because guess what? I'm not the only one who has to get here on time. I'm relying on other people. And I can feel the pressure as the time ticks on, click, 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 and I'm going, we're not going to make it. I can tell we're not getting there, and I can feel a little alone because I'm going, I can change, I can do it, but I'm relying on other people to help me get there on time. We've got to get there together as a family. Now, that's a really simple example. But there's other more extreme things, like I said, of being up against it. If you're behind in bills for multiple months and they're about to shut power off or gas off or something like that, that's a more extreme case than being late for church. So there's different times where the deadline is more extreme, and I get that. But whether we like it or not, I think we're all going to experience in life what it means to feel up against it, to feel like we're in a situation where it seems like there's hardly any way to escape or get out of it. Do you know I had a different message for today? Monday morning is usually when I have a lot of things written down, God speaking to me, or I journal stuff when I feel like God's sharing stuff, and I usually minister from that. But Monday, I start getting a few things down for a few hours, and I had a few hours in the morning, and I had a whole way I was going to go for today. And I was ready to do it, and God was ministering to me about it. And then I went to pick songs for the song service today. And I have a list that has all the song names, and I kind of just look at them and meditate. And I started with the A's because it's in alphabetical order. And I got to this song called Another in the Fire. Who's heard that song before? We haven't done it in a long time, but we've had it. And in that moment, my spirit ignited, and I knew I had to shift. I don't shift messages very well, because I like to be prepared and have it. And it was like, okay, I've got all this. I got about 3-4 pages of notes. I'm ready to go. And I knew I needed to shift. And this is not again, complex message. The last few have just been more exhortations. But I knew I had to shift and talk about this today. And so I really wanted to encourage those of you who feel like you've been maybe up against it. You're facing some challenging situations, and seems like there's hardly a way out. At Monday afternoon, God shifted my message in order, I believe, to speak this to you today, to you watching today. I came to tell you something. Some of you may already know this. Some of you may have never heard this. Some of you may be finding hard to remember this. So I wanted to remind you of 4 simple words today. Just 4 simple words, and we're going to break it open, give a story. I'm going to read a long scripture account here. I usually don't read a ton of scriptures, but I'm going to read the whole account because I think it's important. Of these 4 simple words that you must not forget when you feel up against it. Here, you ready what they are? Number 1, the first word is you. Number 2 is are. Number 3 is not. And number 4 is alone. I don't know what, I think I got 5 different options there. You are not, well, maybe it was alone. Thank you. That's exactly it. You are not alone. That is right. You are not alone. Listen, when you feel like you're carrying the weight of the world, remember, you are not alone. When you have more month than money, guess what? You are not alone. When the doctor's report is not what you hoped, remember, you are not alone. When you still haven't found your significant other, you're single, and your boo hasn't come into your life, guess what? You are still not alone. When your mind is struggling to have hope, you are not alone. Maybe you're launching that new business and you've put everything into it and you're unsure. Guess what? You are not alone. When you're going through a transition of leadership, Derek, you are not alone. See, there was a guy named Joshua who was going through a transition of leadership from a guy named Moses. And he found out that Joshua had died. And he was now getting the leadership of, Moses did a census coming out of Egypt, if you know the story. And he did a census where he was trying to figure out how many able-bodied guys he had to fight. And I think it was about 20 and older. And he counted the numbers, and they say there were 600,000 of those guys. So if you add women and children, Joshua was leading no small congregation. No small congregation. Think of that. Like, there's only how many of us here? 60, 70, right? Like, can you imagine over 1 million? Here's your leadership. I'm sure Joshua felt the pressure. I'm sure he was going, I hope I'm this. I think I can do it. I watched Moses do this. I'm about to step into this. I hope I can do this. I'm sure he felt at times up against it. And so it says in Joshua 1:9, as Joshua is getting encouraged in the beginning of Joshua 1, it says that Joshua heard, what is it? How does it say? I wrote this down. Let me just get it right. It says the Lord spoke to Joshua. I don't know how that process happened back then, but somehow, whether it was an angel or person of the Lord spoke to Joshua, and he's saying and encouraging him, saying, you can do it. You've done this, and he's setting everything up for the first 8 verses in Joshua, and then we get to verse 9, and it says this, have I not commanded you, talking to Joshua, have I not commanded you, ready, to do what? Be strong and courageous. City Center Church. Has God not commanded you to be strong and courageous? Do not be terrified nor dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. This is the Lord talking to Joshua as he's probably sitting there going, these people, that's a massive number. How am I going to do all this? Moses did so well. I got to jump into this. He says, be strong and courageous. I want to tell someone today who's been feeling the pressure, someone who has felt a little hopeless, someone who has felt isolated. Be strong, be brave, be fearless. You are not. Oh, we'll try that again. Be strong, be brave, be fearless. You are not. There we go. Be strong. Be brave. Be bold. Be strong. For the Lord thy God is with you. Be bold. Be strong. For the Lord thy God is with you. Do not be afraid. Do not be dismayed. I'm going to walk in faith and victory. Come on, I walk in faith and victory. For the Lord thy God is with you. All right, that's... Anyone heard that before? Anyone just think I made that up on the spot? That's old school. Blast from the past there. I'm going to walk in. Yeah, all right. Be strong, be brave, be fearless. You are not alone. Joshua was actually reminded of this in front of the people. Moses got up and said the same thing to him before he passed away in Deuteronomy 31:6. He says this to Joshua and the Israelites. He says this, be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. You are not alone. When you are up against it, guess what? You are not alone. Listen, Joshua, he's saying, do not get in fear or dread what you may have to face. Listen, City Center Church, do not get in fear of what you may have to face. Don't be in dread. Don't let what you're about to face dismay you. Don't be terrified of the enemies. Don't get overwhelmed when you are up against it. God will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. You are not alone. I'm just going to keep repeating it until you get it. It's not much more in depth today than that. If you were looking for some deep theological thing today, that's not it. That was the other message I was trying to do on Monday. I really was. And if ever there was an example of feeling pressure, terror, dread while about to go through something, or while going through something, or as we call it, going through the fire, you ever felt like you've been through the fire? It would have to be the account of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. VeggieTales call them Rack, Shack, and Benny. Today I want to be original, so I'm going to call them Shad, Mesh, and Abe. Thank you, Maury. Shad, Mesh, and Abe. Some of you may be familiar with this account. Some of you may be hearing this for the first time. I don't know if you've heard this story before. If you've heard it, don't tune out. Don't be like, I've heard this. Let this be an encouraging reminder to you. If you haven't heard this, let this be something you don't forget. But to give you some quick context to what I'm about to read, I'm going to read Daniel 3, and we're going to read a lot of it. But this guy named Nebuchadnezzar was the second and known as the greatest king of the Chaldean dynasty of the Babylonian Empire. That was for you, Jake. And he was king around 600 BC. And he had taken captive thousands of Jews. They had been dominating and taking people captive. They weren't slaves, but they were captive to another culture, another people, and they were kind of serving them. And so Nebuchadnezzar, he's pretty high on himself. I'm going to call him Nebi. Shad, Mesh, and Abe, and Nebi. He's probably feeling pretty good about himself, and I don't know, they had a lot of gods in their time, in their culture, so maybe this was normal, but he's like, hey, I'm pretty awesome. I do a lot of amazing things. I got this idea. I think I should have something made of me, and people should worship me. Right? Anybody feel like they should have an image made in them and someone should worship it? Please don't put up your hand. We'll have another room for prayer over there at the end. My son put up his hand. We'll deal with that later. Guess I got to do more teachings. So he has this great idea. So we're going to jump into from verse 1 and we're going to read through most of this chapter, break it apart a little bit, then we'll be done. How's everyone doing? Good. Thank you. Nebuchadnezzar, Nebi the king, made a statue of gold, the height of which was 60 cubits and its width 6 cubits. How many mathematicians know how long a cubit is or length a cubit is? What was that? Is that 1.5 feet? Okay. Yeah, it's 1.5 feet, right? So 60 cubits, its height was 90 feet and 9 feet wide. That wouldn't have happened overnight, hey? I think even with our technology today, it'd probably take people 3 years to make something like that. I don't know. But he made it up. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar, Nebi the king, also sent word to assemble the satraps. Any satraps in the house today? Prefects, any prefects? Not perfects, prefects. Those are just names for oversight people during that time. And the governors, the counselors, the chief treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the administrators of the provinces to come to the dedication of the statue that Nebi the king had set up. Then the satraps, and then he says they all came. He says it all again. So we'll just skip that. Or maybe we'll read it for the sake of Alana. She's got to find it. Then the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the chief treasurers, judges, the magistrates, and all the administrators of the provinces were assembled for the dedication of the statue that Nebi the king had set up. Okay. And then they stood before the statue that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, "To you the command is given, you peoples, nations, populations of all languages, that at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon," we had the trigon, no, we didn't have a trigon today, "psaltery, bagpipe, and all kinds of musical instruments, you are to fall down and worship the golden statue that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. But whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be thrown into the middle of a furnace of blazing fire." All right. So put yourself in this. I don't know if the timeline was, because I assume they would have all known it was going to get, being built. And then it says that the king sent word to people about this. I don't know when the king sent word, if he was just like, "Hey guys, show up and I'm going to let you know something." Or they probably had an idea of what was going on. Or if they all show up and the king's like, "Guess what? Today you get to bow." Whatever that process, I still think in the moments, Shad, Mish, and Abe would have had to contend with some stuff. I'm assuming they see it happening and maybe they're hearing wind of what's going on. And they're thinking, you know what, we've done pretty well for ourselves, right? They're Jewish people, they're captives here. But they've risen in the ranks, if you see it, and they're actually administrators over the Babylon area. And if you read about the food, and they had some things with Daniel before, and the king liked them, and so they're doing pretty well. They're thinking God's prospering them. Everything's going good. It's amazing. The king likes us. And then they see the scroll. Then they hear the decree. They get the email, right? They saw the post, and they could feel the fear, dread, or whatever kind of coming in when it says, the king wants to do what? Now, maybe they were 100% strong. They heard this decree, and when they heard it, or they saw it coming down the pike, and they thought, man, we're never going to bow. We're strong in faith. We never, maybe they were strong, but maybe they were a little more human, kind of like us. And so maybe it went down like this. "Hey, Shad, did you see what Nebi did?" "No, I haven't been on my tablet yet today." I've waited a long time to use that. Some of you either didn't get it or just aren't happy today. Tablet? Ba-doom. Thank you. "No, I haven't been on my tablet yet today." What did he do? He is making a decree that everyone has to bow down and worship that new monstrosity he just got made. And he's saying that if you don't, it isn't just going to be a fine or a demotion. He's saying that people will be thrown into that furnace that he has. Now, I don't know if this was like a fire pit for garbage. I know they had a lot of that back in that day. But I wouldn't put it past, they were pretty advanced in culture. It might have been a way to heat the palace. I don't know. But they had some fiery furnace thing doing something nearby the palace that they used, and people knew about it. Man, I have been close to that thing. It gets hot. Do you think Nebi will really throw people like us in there? I mean, come on. He has us in charge of Babylonian commerce and different things. He needs us. He likes us. Yeah, this has to be a scare tactic, right, Abe? You know how sometimes Nebi gets all worked up and makes crazy decrees? I don't know, Shad. He says that they aren't just going to make them jump in and out or dangle them in it. They're going to throw people right into the middle of it. It doesn't seem like singeing or scaring is what he's after. He seems pretty set on doing this, and now that he's said it, I think he's going to have to follow through with it. Hey, Mish, I got an idea. Maybe we can just bow and ask for forgiveness after. We can just bow and then, God, I'm sorry, and ask for forgiveness after. No one's going to really know. Maybe we can do it just one time and we can still have influence and keep our jobs and keep our lives and all that. Maybe there's a way we can call in sick. They had COVID 600 BC. No, that's a bad joke. They could call in sick, and they don't have to be there when it happens. Then people will just forget that we weren't there. And wait, I know. There's other Jews that are serving. We can't be the only ones who are not going to bow. Like, there's got to be others that are, like, contending with this. There's going to be others who won't want to worship this. But man, Abe, I'm really feeling the pressure. I'm really feeling hopeless. I'm really feeling up against it. See, let's put ourselves in that situation. It's easy to read this story and go, oh, we would do the same things as Shaq, Mish, and Abe. But we've heard stories of this. If someone walked into this meeting today and we didn't have the freedoms we did, and someone walked in with a gun and put it to your head and said, denounce Jesus or I'm going to pull the trigger, we would sure find out a lot about ourselves. And from a stage here, I could be like, oh, of course, I would never denounce. But I would have the thoughts, I could denounce and then ask for forgiveness after, right? I could do, maybe, nobody would know, just these people here. So I think if we put ourselves in this situation, it would be a difficult decision to make, but somewhere along the lines, Shad, Mish, and Abe decided that even if they couldn't find any way around assembling, they couldn't find a sick note from their doctor, they couldn't do any way to get around it, they were not going to bow and worship the image of Nebi. So fast forward, whether that happened right away when he announced it, whether they knew it was coming, here's what it says in Daniel 3:7. Ready? Therefore, as soon as all the people heard the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, and bagpipe. That's a bagpipe. That was my attempt at that. They had bagpipes back then. And all kinds of musical instruments, all the people, nations, and populations of the languages fell down and worshiped the golden statue that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. So what happens? And it says what? They all fell down. So I imagine after this moment, one of them going, nope, Shad, guess what? We were the only ones who didn't bow. We thought there was going to be several others and maybe the king would have mercy, but it was us. We were alone in this. Not one other person stood. There's no way they didn't notice us. I mean, I wore my muted camouflage colors, but I'm pretty sure in the middle of 4 million people, we stuck out, or whatever it was, standing there. I just picture this big sea like in front of the thing and of people, and there's 3 of them standing going, I'm pretty sure they noticed us. What if the king comes after us? I'm starting to get scared, Mish. Abe, we knew this was a possibility when we decided we weren't going to bow. And we believe that God is going to be with us through this and that we will not be. Oh, Murray. That's right, gold star. I should have had prizes for that. He was ready with that response. So jump into it now, Daniel 3, going further in verse 8. So remember, they didn't bow, and it says, for this reason, what reason that the 3 guys didn't bow? At this time, certain Chaldeans came forward and brought charges against the Jews. They began to speak and said to Nebi the king, O king, live forever. They pump him up. You're amazing. You're amazing. You, O king, have made a decree that every person who hears the sound of those instruments and all kind of musical instruments is to fall down and worship the golden statue. But, king, whoever does not fall down and worship shall be thrown into the middle. Come on, say middle. Of a furnace of blazing fire. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the administration of the province of Babylon, namely Shad, Mish, and Abe. These men, O king, have disregarded you. They do not serve your gods, nor do they worship the golden statue which you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in a rage and anger, he had rage issues. It's really volatile emotions. He gave orders to bring Shad, Mish, and Abe, that these men, and then these men were brought before the king. Hey, Mish! The guards here are here to take us to the king. Shoot. Someone must have noticed and told him. What are we going to do? God help us. We're up against it. Verse 14, Nebi began speaking and said to them, is it true, Shad, Mish, and Abe, that you did not serve my God, nor worship the golden statue that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery. I don't know if he just had these instruments on demand. Or if he was preparing, he's just like, now if you hear the sound of, here's my, it must have, I don't know, or if it was just like, he's like, anytime I play, bow, play, like anywhere you were, you hear the sound, you got to bow. I don't know. He had these things ready. That's how I think, sorry. I read these stories and go, how is this, he's like, if you hear the sound, but maybe he was prepared. They're going to come and I'm going to do the whole thing and I'm going to bring them in and they get a chance to do the amazing thing because I want everybody in Babylonian era, or the area to bow. They have to. But he says, if you're ready at the moment, I got all these instruments to fall down and worship the statue that I've made very well. But if you do not worship, you will immediately be thrown into the midst. Come on, say midst. Of a furnace of blazing fire. And what God is there who can rescue you from my hands? I don't know if Nebi really liked him. I think they were very favored and a lot of success followed them, or if he was just having a good moment. But he presents them a second chance. Or, as I'm calling today, an easy way out. See, he brought them in. There was only a select few people now. Before it was in front of everyone, but now it's only a few people. I'll bring the instruments. We'll make it more intimate. It won't be as big a deal. I'll give you a moment here, and you just have to do it in front of me. I know you have other, I know you have other beliefs and stuff, but I've put the decree out now. You got to do it in front of me. I'm going to make it this easier. This is an easy way out, Sheb, Mish, and Abe. If you just bow here, I won't spread it. It's an easy way out. I'm sure they're looking at each other at this point and thinking, are we going to do this? Are we doing this? Is this the fire we're going to die on? Maybe we could just do it and no one would really know. Only a few people will see us. It seems like it'd be easier to do it now. Listen, church. Listen, City Center. Listen, person watching. When you are feeling up against it, you will be tempted to take the easy way out of it. When you're feeling up against it, you're going to be tempted to take the easy way out of it. You are behind in your bills. Well, if I can buy these lottery tickets, then I can get enough money to pay, right? When you're up against it, you're going to be tempted to take an easy way. I can go do this, or I can win it back here. Your relationship isn't going well with your spouse. You're having trouble communicating. The intimacy isn't what you want. But I'm finding a great person that I work with of the opposite gender to talk to about my relationship, and they're really listening to me, and they're really helping me. Easy way out, potentially. When you're up against it, it can be easy and be tempted to take the easy way out. You ran out of time to study for your final coming up in university. And so you slip in a cheat sheet on the bottom of your crock that you can flip your foot out and read it. Anyone ever done something like that? Don't put up your hand. I saw it on a video. I didn't come up with that. I don't know if it was real. But they slid in a thing of paper under like their sandals and then they could pull their foot back and read it. Now it's out. It's not a secret. I outed everyone trying that. They're now going to make you take your shoes and socks off for tests. But that's an easy way out. You've been commanded to take a bow. I'm going to take a knee now and make up for it later. Easy way out. When you're feeling up against it, you're going to be tempted to take the easy way out. I'm sure if they're anything like us, which they were, during this time, they would have been praying things along the way like, God, blind their eyes if we don't bow. Right? Make them not see us like, we weren't there and we didn't bow and you blinded them and they're like, oh, good, everyone bowed. They're probably praying that. Maybe they were praying, God, don't let them come for us to let the king have a change of heart. God, make him change his mind. Please, God, come through. But it seems at this point, standing before the king as he's giving him an easy way out, that God is nowhere to be found. And instead of getting better, it's getting worse. Anyone ever been there? You're going through something and you've been praying, and instead of getting better, it seems worse, and it seems like God is nowhere to be found. And here they are. They find themselves in front of the king, giving them a second option. But ultimately, what he is saying to them is, you have a choice: bow or burn. Bow or burn. And Nebi appears to have all the power at this point. And he asked the question, which I think really got them riled up and probably solidified their stance more. But I read it, it's at the end of verse 15. And what God is there who can rescue you from my hands? See, when we're up against it, it seems like there's hardly a way out. This question we may be pondering ourselves: can God really rescue me from this? Is God big enough to save me from this? Is God really with me? See, I don't know where the resolve came for Shad, Mish, and Abe, but with confidence and strength that defies the situation, they look to Nebi and say in verse 16, Shad, Mish, and Abe replied to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, Nebi, we are not in need of an answer to give you concerning this matter. They say, listen, you may be jacked up on all yourself and how good you are, but we don't answer to you or your gods. That would have angered him, as you can see later. But he says, if it be so, our God whom we serve is able to rescue us from the furnace. Come on, say from. Look at your neighbor and say, from. Look at somebody else and say, you are not alone. Tell yourself, I am not alone. If you're watching today, let me know. Say, you are not alone. Type in, you are not alone. Encourage me today. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, you can encourage Maury. He's watching that. Let us know that you are not alone. If it be so, our God whom you serve is able to rescue us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. These guys said to the king, we don't have to justify ourselves to you of why we won't bow. We don't answer to you, we answer to a higher power. But we are convinced, we believe, we have faith that the God whom we serve is actually able to rescue us from this furnace of blazing fire. He will rescue us from you, O king. If it be so. They're saying, if it be so, from. If it be so from, I'm not sure at this point still, this is my thought on this, that Shad, Mish, and Abe are still expecting some kind of deliverance from the fire. Wouldn't you be? Like some angels coming in, some friends going, we're going to save you, like pulling them out, because they're saying, if it be so, like if this is what you're going to do, or if it actually happens, we believe God will rescue us from the fiery flames of the furnace. From your hand. I think they were thinking, man, we're gonna get saved before we hit the flames. That's what I would think was salvation or what God would do. But what we fail to notice when we're up against it is those verses that we read that promise us we are not alone, that God will never leave us or forsake us, that God can do exceedingly, abundantly, above all we ask or think. They never say that God will keep us from ever being up against it. They talk about how God will never leave us while we were up against it. Oh, I know some are just like, yeah. But this is so important. See, I think Shad, Misha, and Abe thought it was all going to be from. But those verses don't say, in your life, I'll deliver you from ever being up against it. What it says is, I'll be with you while you're going through it, while you're up against it, while you're feeling the pressure, while it's going on. See, I think there's a difference at this point between rescue and protect. See, rescue means save or keep from a dangerous situation. Protect means save or keep well in a dangerous situation. See, we don't like that. We want to see it saved from all difficulties. But God's saying, I never guaranteed that. What I guaranteed is when or while you're going through difficulties, while you're up against it, while there's pressure, I will not leave you or forsake you. You are not alone. Be not afraid. Be not terrified. Be courageous. Be brave. That's what he said. That's what he guarantees. See, rescue implies saving from the flames. Protecting implies saving well in the flames. This is an important point. See, when we're up against it, and I'm almost done here. When we're up against it, we're often sure that God is going to rescue us from the flames. And when it doesn't happen like we think God has failed. Anyone ever thought that? I've thought that. I thought I was going to get delivered from this. I thought I shouldn't have to go through this. What's happening? Why am I why is this happening? We think we're alone. We think it's over. We maybe give up on God. We blame God. We bow. But I love what Shad, Mish, and Abe said. They said this, if it be so, our God whom we serve is able to rescue us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he will rescue us from your hand. He's saying, we believe we're going to get rescued from this. That was their belief. But watch this. I love these words that come right now. I was just talking to Jake before. They say this, but even if he doesn't. Those 4 words challenge my faith more than probably anything. See, we have the 4 words, you are not alone, but they said, even if he doesn't. They say, we believe God will heal. We believe God's going to do this. We believe we're going to get rescued. We believe something's going to happen. They say, but even if he doesn't, I love this. Let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods nor worship the golden statue that you have set up. We are not going to bow. Even if it doesn't go the way we think, even if we're not rescued, even if we get thrown into the furnace, even if we're up against it more than we've ever been before, we know that we are not going to bow. We know that God will find a way to protect us, to keep us. Verse 19, the Nebi was filled with wrath, and his facial expression was changed towards Shad, Meshach, and Abe. He answered by giving, his face went from this, oh guys, this is one more chance to, right? Remember, he's highly volatile. His facial expression changed. Oh, you guys. He answered by giving orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he ordered certain valiant warriors who were in his army to tie up Shad, Meshach, and Abe. I don't know if he was like, I need the guys who are the strongest to tie the tightest knots. I don't know why it had to be valiant warriors to tie the knots, but he was angry. He got his best people to tie, his best knot makers, his strongest guys to tie them up, to bound them, to bind them, to not let them get free, in order to throw them into the furnace of blazing fire. Then these men were tied up in their trousers, their coats, their caps, and their other clothes. Maybe they usually did it naked. I don't know why they thought to put what they were wearing in this. Maybe they were like, they're going to die anyways, take the clothes, we can use them. But he was so angry, maybe it signified how fast he did it. I don't care what they're wearing, just throw them in. But they did it fully clothed, and it says this, they were thrown into the middle, say middle, of the furnace of blazing fire. For this reason, because the king's command was harsh, and the furnace had been made extremely hot. I'm guessing they were rushing to get his command done, that they didn't really think it through. The flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shad, Meshach, and Abe. But the 3 men, Shad, Meshach, and Abe, fell into the middle of the furnace of blazing fire, still tied up. See, notice, it says middle over and over, midst and middle, midst and middle. These guys weren't just on the outskirts of the fire. They weren't trying to gasp for some air under the door, smoke, and just kind of the smoke was hurting them. They weren't where the fire was not as hot. They were dropped in the midst, bound up, right in the midst of the battle, right in the heart of the fire, bound up. Verse 24, then, everyone say then. Then. This isn't in my notes. But at the moment when it feels like you're most in the midst of the fire, bound up, that's when God gets ready for a then. Come on. Then. Why? Because everyone else had done their shot. The king had done everything he could to follow through with that, to make it seem like they were up against it. By now, they've probably given up hope at the end of everything. Listen, the then didn't happen before the flames. The then happened right in the middle of the flames. See, we want the then to happen before, but God's saying, no, the then might happen right in the middle. And if you read the rest of the story, there was a lot that happened because of this then. It changed a nation and how they saw God. Come on. I don't have time to get into that. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded, and he stood up quickly. They just set up chairs around to observe human barbecue. Crispy. That smell would have been pretty rank. Stood up quickly, he said to his counselors, was it not 3 men we threw bound into the middle of the fire? They replied to the king, absolutely, O king. Nobody else was getting in there. People were dying trying to get in there. He responded, look, I see 4 men untied. I see 4 men untied and walking about in the middle of the fire unharmed. I see 4 men untied, walking about in the middle, not on the outskirts, not where it's not hot, right in the middle of the heat, walking around, untied, freed, and unharmed. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods. Son of the gods. There's so much good going on here. Listen, Nebi and his guys were so confused at what was happening. This was not supposed to be what happened when these guys went in the fire because they didn't bow. This is not the outcome that we thought. This is not what we had planned. These guys were supposed to go in and get destroyed, get burnt, and not survive. Instead, they're walking around in the middle, and it doesn't look like they're by themselves. You are not. You are not. Oh, you are not. And even in the middle of the fire doesn't mean God has forgotten about you. Jesus shows up and joins them in the midst of the fire to let them know they are not alone, to let them know he had never left them or forsaken them, to let them know that all will be okay. Listen, you may feel like you're up against it. You may be going through the fire. You may feel like you should have been rescued long ago. I'm telling you, keep following Jesus. Keep standing in faith. Keep believing. Keep worshiping, because when you are up against it, God is still in the midst of it. Come on, I'm going to say that again. When you are up against it, God is still in the midst of it. When it seems like it's too much, when it seems like the fire is too hot, when it seems like you're helpless and alone and the pressures are mounting, God is still in the middle of that. You are not alone. And when God is in the midst, everything changes. Everything changes. See, these guys were supposed to be bound, burnt, and destroyed. Throw them in the middle. They were supposed to be bound, burnt, and destroyed. But Jesus showed up, and they came out freed, fresh, and unharmed. Some of you right now may be feeling like you're supposed to be bound, burnt, and destroyed. But I came simply to tell you, you are not alone. And when you're up against it, God is still in the midst of it. And you can come out free, fresh, unharmed. See, we're not promised that God will always rescue us from the way we think. But we are promised he will not leave us or forsake us. Church, he will not leave you or forsake you. Brad said it a few weeks ago. We are not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. You are not alone. When you are up against it, God is in the midst of it. Music team's going to come up, but before they move, this is the song that God put in my heart. And I asked them to graciously let me I'm just getting stuff ready.